All right, so any questions from last week? Geez, am I doing that good a job, or?
Yes, sir.
Anyway, that's good if everything's gelling. Videos that help online, to be able to go back and watch things. Tonight's going to be another one of those all analog nights. And as I told you many times, that I'm not a real fan of the way this book is put together. And the reason that I'm not, you'll understand at the end of tonight. We're going to cover all the way to the glossary tonight. So we're going to cover a lot of ground. But the thing about the ground we're going to cover tonight is you've already seen 90% of it. Because I put things together early that wasn't in the chapter you were reading. Because I believe it's easier to teach it if you teach it as a whole entity, as opposed to a bunch of little slivers. And they did it because of the way the test questions work. Alrighty, so tonight we're going to talk about some fun things. And tell me how many of these you think we've already covered. Tell you what, show me a sign if this is something you haven't heard talked about in here. The band plan. Well, we've talked about that. Here's one you probably will agree that we haven't. We haven't talked about contacts and etiquette. Contacts meaning talking to people on the radio. We haven't talked about etiquette. We're going to talk about that tonight. Cue signals, that's new. Got a little handout for you. We're going to go through that. We've talked about repeaters. Tonight we're going to go through and talk about the transmit and receive offsets and splits and what subcarrier or subaudible tones is all about, because those are important now. Digital transmissions. Hey, we talked about that. We talked about DMR last week. Remember the time slot stuff we were talking about? That's DMR. All right. So we got a little bit of stuff to talk about when it comes to radio nets, traffic nets and stuff like that. ARES and RACES, the two groups that are built around amateur communications. We're probably not even going to talk about satellite communications tonight because guess what? We've talked about it. The last couple of things we're going to talk about, some regulations and some safety. And I'm just going to breeze through the book and hit high points. So, the band plan. Why do we need a band plan? You have to know where you can operate legally, right? We talked about why you can't sit on the edge of a band because your radio signal may overlap outside the band. Okay? So that's the big thing. There's one in your book. I gave you one last week, I think it was. It was all colorful. And the big thing to remember there is know your class of license. This is a technician class license. So if you look at that band plan, there's going to be a little T out there. Or you can look at the one back at the end of chapter 1. When you dive in there, you're going to see, let me get over here to come on, there it is. 1-23. Now you'll notice that there's, on every band, there's a block that has EAG or maybe just E, A, or G, extra, advanced, general, technician, and novice. The band plan is still built with 5 classes of license. Today we only have 3. We have technician, that's what you're taking. Hey man, good to see you. So when you take next week's technician, or 2 weeks from now when we take the technician, I'm really hopeful that all of you pass it. I'm going to make a suggestion. I would like every one of you, when you pass, go get the general test. And you go, well, Tommy, I hadn't studied that. Exactly. It costs you nothing extra. Because once you pay your $10 to test, you can test all the way through. If you get lucky because you've read along and you understand and you've listened to the things that I've said, because I've given you a lot of the theory for general, because I think you need to know it. Okay, there's a lot of that stuff that we've talked about in this class. Ain't going to be on this test. It's on the general test. Okay, so if you fail the general, you still get your technician license. What I'm telling you is it's already free. Take the 15, 20 minutes that it'll take to just answer. And I rightly don't care if you guess. If you don't know, guess. What's the worst that can happen? You pass it. Okay? If you pass it, that's going to get you HF privileges. I think Tyler's already told me he plans on taking that test. That's good. All of you should take that test. And, God help you, if you pass it just by the skin of your teeth, take another 20 minutes, sit down, take the extra test. You're not going to pass it, but you know what it looks like. Okay, if you were in here earlier tonight, you would have heard a conversation between me and Phil. Because if you look there between where the extra bands are broken out on your band plan, you'll find it's just little slivers. And those are coveted by people that have, that little quest, I must be the supreme leader,
It gives sneering rights also.
Sneering rights, okay.
Good way.
Well, spoken by one, okay? So here we go. So I'm telling you, folks, you can have a lot of fun with ham radio with a technician class license. Go ahead and take the stupid general test. If you pass it, great. If you don't, fine.
Move on.
Yeah, exactly. You move on. There's a fair amount of math that pops up in the extra that you will have, because Bruce is going through it now, that you'll have to memorize because you dang sure in common life will not ever use again. It will make everything that you took in high school and college look like it had meaning. Okay? Yeah. It's that bad. Yeah, it's, there are those. Now, one of my mentors was here for the first class. That's Hap Griffin. Hap got me into this mess. He's gotten me into a lot of messes. Now, he's one of those guys that will take 35 minutes to explain a damn formula to you because he believes it's important. And it is to people that need the formula. To those of us that don't, we can walk outside and clearly see that the sun is shining. Okay?
Right.
Anyway. So, hey, my public service announcement for the night. Like I'm sure everybody's tired of listening, but I do it again just because it's my public service announcement. Folks, we're getting real close to you having a license in your hands. Okay? We're not there yet. If you buy a radio, please refrain from keying up and playing. Okay? I don't want you to jeopardize your license. You work too hard for this. Okay? That's my public service announcement. If you want to know if it works, well, right now there are 3, 4, 5 hands sitting in the room that would be happy to help you. Okay? You'll be there really soon. And from what I understand, how long does it take to get it back now? I think after you take the test, you'll get a little piece of paper that says you passed. Your license may be available the next morning.
Yeah, it's not long.
It's not long anymore. I had to wait for 3 weeks for mine to come in. Because at that point in time, the Postal Service was still real happy about what they did for a living. And they wanted to make you wait. Amazon hadn't been invented back then. So, beginning of chapter 6, if you would just follow along with me, 6:1. All of that stuff there, we talked about the band plan. Don't get on the edges. Stay in the legal part of the band. Enjoy. Have a lot of fun. Okay? So the rules basically about the band plan, you'll notice that if you look at your band plan, you're going to find places that you can operate CW. You're going to see groups of frequencies that you can operate on single sideband. There are other groups of frequencies or areas of spectrum, if you want to look at it that way, that are going to tell you that you can work FM repeaters or FM simplex. Okay? Remember when I told you that you have to have a license to operate on amateur radio bands, and that's because our signals go outside the country. So these segments of the band that are broken up for these different services are strictly related to those international agreements. Okay? So those have been negotiated with all the different countries for us to operate in a mode and in a band. Oop, pocket's blowing up. Boy, that's...
Harass him before you leave, Tom. Heather or Jennifer?
No, that was actually Jim Reading calling me. One of our hams is calling me in the middle of a freaking class. Apparently he doesn't know if it's AM or PM right now, so anyway, such is life. Good evening. Nice of you to join us. You haven't missed much. I've just been ranting, and you've listened to that all your life. Okay, so please understand that there are segments of the band, every one of the bands, are segments you can use for different things. That is necessary to retain order. Okay? There are not many test questions about that. The book's going to show you, and it's going to be things like weak signals. It's going to be things about like, what is simplex, what is duplex. So let's talk about simplex and duplex for a second. So simplex is, it's basically one person to another person. One person keys up, one listens, or multiple listen. And then when they unkey, they turn to push the talk loose, then somebody else can talk. That's simplex. Okay? In duplex means I'm transmitting, it's going up, hitting a repeater, and it's coming back down. They're not listening to my direct signal. They're listening to the repeated signal on a different frequency. Okay? I'm getting some blank stares. So I'm going to draw something here. All right? And this one, I'll probably leave this up, so I'm going to draw in the upper corner up here. We talked about repeaters. All right, so I'm going to put my antenna way high in the air. All right, and that's going to come down, and my first block is going to be 80. Would help if I could spell. I was getting ready to actually write it backwards.
I can do that.
I can too. I learned how to teach a long time ago from behind equipment and write backwards, and sometimes my brain just skips. Okay, so one side's going to go to the, what are my two radio blocks, folks? Thank you. All right, over here is going to be so what two things do I have to have for a radio to have, for a two-way radio to work? Yes!
TX and RX.
Okay. So, I'm going to use a real-life example of our fry-breathing Ninja Turtle out here. It's at 800 feet. You like that example? Dude, it covers. It always has. Okay. Anybody notice anything different there between those two frequencies? Can you read my scribble?
I can't see that far.
Okay, still can't see that far. The receiver has 147.615. Transmitter's on 147.015. Okay? So, that is a plus 600. Plus 600. Okay? So we're in duplex. We're going up. We're actually transmitting on our radio. So if you've got 015 in your radio and you hit the transmit button, it's going to change in your display to 147.615 because the transmit offset is plus 600. In the 2 meter band, it's either going to be plus 600 or minus 600. Okay? So the important things there is knowing that my transmit frequency and my receive frequency are two different freaks, and they're offset by 600 kilohertz. Okay? That is the split. Okay? The 600 kilohertz split, or the offset. Okay? If you're on UHF, if you're up in the 440 ham band, okay, at UHF or the 440 frequencies that we use for voice, it's plus 5 megahertz. Dave?
I'm just.
Oh, okay. Preach on it. Okay, I'm good.
Yep.
Let me introduce you to something else that involves repeaters. This has a anybody want to tell me what 123 hertz is and why is it relevant? Oh, thank you, Phil. This won't key this repeater up. You can tell I spent way too many days in the commercial business, can't you? All right, so let me change that.
Please do. That might work.
Okay, I'll tell you funny. Okay. So that is the sub-audible or CTCSS tone. We put that tone on the audio so that just spurious emissions and people farting around that don't really understand what they're doing won't key it up. You have to have it on your radio when you transmit. We retransmit it on the output so that you can set your tone squelch on your radio. So when you're driving through town, you don't have to listen to cable TV noise. Do you experience that driving? I know you get a little radio. You hear some crap when you go through a neighborhood and you can't understand it? Welcome to Spectrum Cable. They leak like a sieve. And when it gets bad, we slap them on their wrists. And there have been times where we have sent spectrum analyzer measurements to the FCC office in Atlanta, and they have encouraged them to fix this. That was back when it was Time Warner. Okay, so when you look at a radio, how to program a channel, you got to program a receive frequency. A lot of times it will just ask you if it's plus 600 or minus 600. You can go in and set in a custom offset, but it's going to be 600 kilohertz on 2 meters. It's going to be 5 megahertz on 440. The other thing you got to have is the tone. And you saw me put 123 up there and everybody giggled because every other freaking repeater that's commercial in Sumter County is on 123. So that tells you I programmed way too many things other than ham radio in my life. So there is a chart, and those are in steps. And you can find that online relatively easy. It's actually in the, if you look up the repeater table of what repeaters are in a county or a city or in a state, it's going to give you this information. And this is the information that goes in your radio. Okay? The other thing, so let's put this up here for giggles. CTCSS or EL. Now,
That's a trademark.
that is a trademark. Private line, it actually goes back to the GE days. GE, believe it or not, I think they put it in the prog line before Motorola put it in the most something.
Whatever.
Yeah. Yeah.
Max
Dude, they had some boat anchors. And, you know, back when radios were just the radio, not the control head or the speaker or the microphone. Just the mobile radio is the size of that trash can.
Yeah, they were huge.
And we're full of tubes. The old days.
Oh, yeah.
So there is one other that you will see, and that is DPL. Anybody want to guess what DPL is? Hang on. You've been reading ahead.
Oh, I did this 3 years ago.
Like I said, I didn't say when you read it. Could have been in a kindergarten book. Okay, that's digital private line, DPL. And all that is a numerical code. And if you were to put it on a scope where you could actually see it, it would look like Mr. Square Wave. Okay? And all that is a numerical value that the radio can decode. We don't use DPL in ham radio. Your radios will have it in case you're trying to listen or talk to somebody in the commercial spectrum. And since we're going to talk about that, let's talk about the next thing. Because a radio that you buy may operate outside of the ham band, it does not make it type accepted for that use. Okay? We learned a lot in the last couple of years because the Chinese have been flooding our market with really inexpensive radios. I'll be honest with you. They work pretty freaking good. This is one of the trashiest radios I've ever had in my life. But this is the first one that I can tell you, it's a dual banner and it cost me $30 on Amazon. It works. I use it all the time. Is it a pure radio? Is it an RF engineer's perfect radio?
No.
God, no. I mean, you ride through town and you get more interference than you get signals some days. But you get out away from the cable system, the stupid thing works, and it's disposable. You know, so, you know, I'm not bashing them. It just buyer beware. It's not the best thing you'll ever own. So please, if you buy one of these, do not judge your ham radio experience on a purchase that cheap. A real ham radio from Kenwood, Icom, or Yaesu. And notice I stopped there, folks. Okay? There are other brands. Those three major brands are going to set you back $200 for the same functionality this has as a minimum. Alinco makes good radios. It's kind of between the two. Who else is out there without just going straight Chinese? On the DMR side, there's a lot of Chinese names that you'll find. I would strongly recommend you just ask the advice of somebody that's on DMR. I know the TYT, the MD380s have been well received. It's a $100 radio that'll do all our UHF stuff and DMR. And I'm probably going to buy one in the next couple of weeks because right now they're $80. Yeah, they're really inexpensive. Great way to get on DMR. They work. But just know that the more you pay for a radio, the better it's going to work. And because what they've done is they put more stuff under the hood. It's not that this one has fancy shiny knobs. It's better filtering. Remember we talked about filtering. We talked about sensitivity and selectivity, how well it hears, how well it stays to just that and doesn't pick up the extraneous stuff on the sides. It becomes very important. Okay? So that's how duplex works. That's how repeaters work. Okay, so let's talk about, well, I'm going all over the place tonight. I promise I'll get all of it tonight. Let's talk about contacts on a repeater. When you have a conversation, okay? If you had listened to me coming in tonight, you would have heard me probably key up, because I really hate having a CWID running on top of me. So I'll bump it once and let it ID. And before it actually unkeys from IDing, I throw my ham call out there, usually with mobile. My ham call is Kilo Bravo 4 Charlie India Hotel, KB4CIH. Sometimes you may end up with a call sign that's very difficult to understand because letters sound like other letters. Okay? What?
V.
V sounds like B or P, depending on how noisy you are, or E or D or any of those things. That's why we use phonetics. So I'm going to pass out this little sheet. One of the, tell you what, I'm going to do this differently tonight. I'm on this side of the table. Take one down, pass it around. I'm going to hang on to one, pass it down. There's plenty enough. We'll have extra. Okay, so a little challenge for you guys, not necessarily in class, because I don't want to do that. But at some point, before you get your license, I would like you to understand phonetics. So the reason there is when you use phonetics as opposed to letters, people can actually understand what you're saying faster, and usually the first time. The other thing that's real handy, if you end up with an old guy who can't understand the difference between, and it's no disrespect, bro, it's just listening to it on the radio. It's tough some days, especially on HF. Was it Rob or Bob? Okay? We all struggle with that, just meeting people. I am terrible with names. Half the kids that used to work for me have nicknames because I still don't know their name. And there was one kid named Skippy the Love Sponge. I still don't remember his name, but I fired him. I did. Yeah, and I had a kid named Ratchet Strap because he left the office one day and the motor mounts broke on his car, and he called back to the office and got one of my other guys that worked for me to bring him one of those 21-foot ratchet straps. And they threw it over underneath the engine and ratchet strapped it up underneath the fender so he could drive 20 miles an hour home. Okay, so I have funny names for people. It's just me. So what I want you to do is I want you to get used to, while you're waiting on your call to come in, what's your first name phonetically? Mine is Tommy, Tango Oscar Mike Mike Yankee. Tango, for T, O for Oscar, M for Mike, Y for Yankee. So what happens when you do that, and I just threw that out pretty fast because that's how I'm used to doing it. And some people come back, Ami, because they missed the first letter, they weren't listening fast enough. But when you get on and you make that first call, tonight it was usually, because I still have a 2x3. Okay, you guys get the 2x3 business? Let's talk about that. This is going to be a number. My call happens to be 4 in this case. So that is a 2x3. That's the old way novice and technicians calls used to look. In the old days, the only way you could get a shorter call was to get your general license. At one point in time, my partner in crime, who's dead now, and I miss him greatly, started out Kilo Nancy 4, November Oscar Charlie. And as soon as he got to general, he went to a 1x3 and became K4NOC. K4. Okay. Shelley knows it. Yeah, that was a bad day when we lost him. Close friend. Yeah. So you're going to hear calls. So Phil's call is K4SPL. I can tell you that is a vanity call because right now, the higher you get up in licensing, you can apply for a vanity call. Now, since my friend Phil back here is so vain, he decided he needed a vanity call. Here's the cool thing. I'm going to tell you a secret tonight. His real name is Stephen. Oh, we all know him as Phil. K4, Stephen, Philip, Lackey. That's what's called a vanity call. Okay? When you get up higher in the food chain, one of those reasons for taking that test with math you'll never, ever, ever use again in your life is the ability to apply for cool vanity calls when it's time. Now, Bruce went the other way. Okay? Bruce decided, his nickname, because his last name is Knobloch. Aren't you proud I remembered that? He's known as Nobby. So he decided to go KN0 BBY. Well, when you write that out, it's still a 2x3. So K, Kilo November 0 BBY. Kind of see why he did that? Okay?
Throws people off because they say, I've never met a 0 before.
Exactly. So that brings us to a good place tonight.
Ding!
Yeah. So, what is this business? Why is there one freaking number in this? If you look over a couple pages in your book, and I'm not going to go, but you'll see it as you go through the evening. The U.S. used to be split up in regions. The Southeast was what we called foreland. Anybody that got a ham call in that area of the country? Let me see if I can find it ahead. Anybody got a page number already?
716.
What that?
716.
Okay, jump ahead to 716. I know I'm all over the place tonight, folks, but it'll make sense. So if you look at that little breakout of the map, my friend Bruce is masquerading that he lives out in the Dakotas. Either that or he's from the wheat fields of Kansas. But in the old geographic area, those numbers were generated by the FCC based off your address. At one point in time, the requirements were so stringent that my friend Mike Mello, KQ7E, had to sign his call with a stroke 4 behind it, I believe, because he was temporarily living here in the Air Force. Those restrictions got relaxed over the years. And by the time, Mike had gotten here and gotten settled in the cardboard housing of the old 5000 area Shaw, those of you who know it and love it, yes, the cardboard section. It was the boxes, the 4000 area come in. It didn't matter anymore. Then when vanity calls come out, suddenly the number doesn't matter anymore. They will issue you a 4 call with a South Carolina address. You can try vanity, if you're a technician, you can exchange that for another 2x3 with a different area code in it. It's up to you. Big thing is it's available to you now. So vanity calls are kind of chic. I'm an odd duck. I still have the original call that was issued to me as a novice. See? Yeah, yours was what? KN4?
KN4 YKG.
YKG.
See, my original was, KU4 Foxtrot November uniform, FNU.
FNU. I do remember that now. Thank you.
Remember that?
I do remember that.
Yeah, that was my original call.
Whoa. Phil, what was yours?
CAC. N4 CAC.
KB4CAC.
Then N4HTY.
Then N4HTY.
And unfortunately, in November, I was not able to get N4.
Yeah. Yeah, we were talking about that earlier because he was trying for K4PL.
And the one you just mentioned, phone call from, he was able to get.
He was able to do it. Jim went from,
Ooh, that's tough. Before KIV.
yeah, WE4KIV went to K4JR. Now, what's really funny is George is KK4Q, KK4F. And we have a guy named Mike Craven in the club that's KK4FU. Shelly loves that license plate every time Mike drives by her job. But anyway, so that's that madness there.
Well, you thought my original was hard. My one I got was even harder when I went to Whiskey 4 Echo Papa Delta. People kept saying PDE because it's
Yeah.
a TV station over there.
Yeah.
They kept saying W4 PDE. That was not right.
Yeah, I could remember doing field day, guys, that Hap's original call was WA4UMU. Now, you want to talk about a call to slay. But sometimes hams get a little creative. So when we used it for field day, we were messing up the phonetics very large. It was Whiskey Alpha 4, Uncle Mike's underwear. And trust me, we were shooting fish in a bucket because it was so funny that people were calling us. Our field day scores went through the roof that year. Especially if you get a lady out there calling Uncle Mike's underwear. It's just comical and everybody goes, oh, that's freaking funny. So the night that I worked King Hussein of Jordan, he actually did. Okay, station Uncle Mike's underwear from, Yeah. So we have a little bit of fun with that. So the fun with phonetics thing is kind of just, it is what it is. But there's something else on this sheet I want you to look at. You will actually hear us use Q signals. We don't use 10-4, we don't use 10-7 or 10-8. Yeah, we don't do 10-4 good, buddy. That's on a very limited amount of spectrum that usually has a very high QRM. Anybody want to guess what that is? You got a sheet in front of you. I guessed. I know what's on there. Your transmission is being interfered with. It's noisy. One way to remember that is QRM or QRN are both noise related. Okay, man-made, you're being interfered with. N for natural. Yeah, it's the vaping people. Key up and vape.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's some we use and some we don't. Okay, you may hear QRZ and a call sign. Is somebody calling me? And we have people that haven't read the sheet and just think they know what it means, and they use it as well. QRP. Is it on here? Yeah, QRP, decreased power, often referred to as using very little power. Okay? And that's the guys that try to work the world on a tuna fish can transmitter that has a 1 watt output. And they do it. Yeah. Because you don't need a tremendous amount of power. You have the ability to run a lot of power, but remember a couple of weeks ago I said you only use the amount of power that you need to establish communications. And the reason we do that is so we do not create QRM. Yeah, on other folks. So sometimes you'll hear about QTH. QTH is going to be, my location is. The Q signals were created for CW because you can condense a whole phrase into a couple of letters. And if you're sending them, you know, QTH is, or QTH Sumter SC. There's a whole lot less pounding on a brass paddle than I live in Sumter, South Carolina. Okay? It's all about convenience. You know, we often don't talk about, you know, QTHs on 2 meters. Most 2 meters is so incredibly informal. We speak in something called English. And then occasionally you'll hear, you know, one of our southern French brethren from southern Louisiana. And you may not have a freaking clue what they just said, but they tried. And they don't listen to us very well either. So anyway, be aware of those. I don't know that there's test questions, or maybe a test question or two. Big thing is understand them and why we use them.
Using a lot more in emergency communications.
Yeah, exactly. And hey, it's as good a time as any to talk about emergency communications. Okay, so I'm not going to get into areas and races until the end of this. Anybody notice that we had weather Sunday? Anybody affected by the weather? Okay. I thought about you guys because one spun up not too far from, well, probably wasn't that far from you guys because it come out of western Kershaw County into Lee County. Okay, so and that one in North Columbia hadn't petered out. It would have been in your backyard. All right, so we talked about the SC Hearts network. Remember when we were talking back at the beginning of all of this, that we took all of our ham repeaters around the state and we built geographic networks that could actually tie together. So when all of this stuff tied together, when the Weather Service said conditions are favorable and we're expecting an outbreak, okay, you'll see the little thing come on, you know, there's a tornado watch for these counties in South Carolina, you know, and they're asking all trained weather spotters to report whatever happens. How many trained weather spotters do we have in the room? Okay. Some of you may not be interested, you may be interested. We're going to have a training class at our club meeting in April. 3rd Monday of the month. You do not have to be a member. Come join us. We'll have one of either the state hydrologist has been the one that comes over and does that. But we do a little 30, 45 minute weather presentation. You know, we even look, you know, tornado, yes, no. Cow, same cow. If you watch Twister, you'll know the joke. Okay, so you get to learn about cloud formations. It's not real deep, but what you will see is you won't look at the sky the same way again. You'll go, that's rotation. You know, it's better than watching 50 minutes of Reed Timmer on video because that guy's just a lunatic. If you don't know who that is, just watch, what is it, Storm Chasers or whatever it is, you know. Or find Tyler that used to be the tech director of Alice Drive because he chased one across the pasture in a heartbeat. Yeah, there's some strange children out there. But, you know, one of the things that happens is when we activate basically the spotters or the hams, we turn that network over and link the entire state. So Sunday night, I'm sitting in my recliner. I've got TV on because I'm watching a car race, praying for a wreck, because I really like carnage, especially automobile carnage. That's just super cool. And it was disappointing because we didn't have a lot of wrecks this week. So You know, and you're sitting there and you got the map in the corner with the blinking little counties. Hey, the counties can blink, good. But then I'm listening to all the damage reports coming in via ham radio. All the damage reports out of Edgefield County were reported by hams. All the damage in Lexington County were reported by hams. The Weather Service is learning from us. Okay? That is a way that you can help. Now, that doesn't mean you've got to go out and sit in the field with binoculars and wait on golf ball size hail to come pelt you. That just means where you're at, what you see. If there's damage, you let us know. There are formal ways to do that. Most of the time we have traffic nets for weather. It's informal. You wait until everything's quiet, and then you key up and give your call sign. And whoever the net control station is will acknowledge you if they can. If not, you wait and you do it again. Okay? Very simple. If you get on and you don't know that there's a net going on and somebody tells you, hey, right now the repeater is being used for a severe weather net. Okay, all that means is they're not telling you to go away, you know, or F off and die if you're that type persuasion. All they're telling you, Bruce, is take your QSO and go somewhere else. Bruce got told that Sunday, along with Merrill, and you guys know Merrill. Neither one meant any harm by it. They just heard silence on the radio. Hey, I can talk.
Now, and I had to monitor it beforehand, and I would watch TV.
Yeah. And you won't know. But if you get out there and you throw your ham call out, KB4CIH, and unkey, if there's something going on, somebody's going to key up and go, hey, we're under a severe weather emergency right now. Please take your conversation to another repeater, or do you have traffic for this net? And that's not meant to offend you. It may save somebody's life. Okay? Plain and simple. But every time something was spinning up, we knew about it on ham radio because the guy at the Weather Service is telling us everything they're seeing raw that they don't have time to type the dang bulletin. So we knew about the spin up in Red Bank before a good 6.5, 7 minutes before it made TV. We know these things.
And TV's getting it from the Weather Service.
TV's getting it from the Weather Service.
So they're waiting.
So even the great Gandy, and Jim Gandy's a nut, and I love him dearly because he's a good weatherman. He's got a good team. They're getting their products from the Weather Service. We're giving the Weather Service the product to give to them. So plain and simple, if you want to know what's going on, trust me, listen to ham radio. You'd be surprised. If you want to know what's going on with hurricanes, there's a freak on 40 meters and a freak on 20 meters that they do the hurricane nets depending on day or night. And you can listen to the guys come on and give the damage reports from all of those little uninhabited islands. Because there's a ham out there somewhere with a bicycle generator. And he may be sweating to death pedaling his rice rocket to get on the air. But you know what? He gets on the air and he lets the world know. And that's how help gets to those folks. Because of hams. Okay? There's ARIES and there's RACES. The Amateur Radio Relay League has a group called ARIES. We do an ARIES training net Tuesday night. Okay? You can tell how often I participate. What's that?
7.
Yeah, I get that email every week, but I'm never there because usually I'm trying to cook dinner about 7 o'clock on a good Tuesday night. It's a good thing to listen to because what they do is if there is no traffic for the net, if there's not anything that has to be passed, any health and welfare traffic, the next thing they do is do a little training session on how to do this. How to help you be more efficient at this. Because it may save your life one day.
Steve's great. Steve does a good job.
Okay, Steve does great. I learned this morning that I happened to be in town and had a radio on and called George going, what in the name of God is this on 015? And he goes, oh, that's the Thursday morning Hearts net. You know, after the net, then they do a little training thing. I was trying to figure out why some guy was telling me about antennas this morning.
Polarization, vertical and horizontal.
Exactly. I'm going to orient my volume control down and call George, what the crap is this? And he laughed. Okay, so I'm on when I'm available. Hopefully the new job I'll be more available. Actually, I'm planning on bolting a radio in my company truck. They don't know that yet. I will sacrifice their truck. But that's what good hams do. We sacrifice vehicles to the antenna farm. You'll understand that one day. Larry Butler is not around for the extreme example video anymore. If you ever saw one of Larry's vehicles, you know, there's a tower section bolted on top of that little.
You remember how many antennas stormy hell that old van is?
Yeah, well, I mean, that was kind of commonplace because Jimmy and I had a lot on our vans before he became, you know, a radio shop guy, but a lot. But yeah, Larry actually had a tower section bolted to his Peugeot. Yeah, it smoked like a heathen, but it had a large antenna network on it. Anyway, back to the stuff. So just know that when it comes to emergency communications, we do that a lot. We are more than happy to help you learn how to do that. The best example I can give you is simply just listen more until you're comfortable, okay? So over on, let's look at 611 since we're talking about repeaters. Page 611's got a little block up there that basically shows you what a repeater directory would look like. You can look at the city and you'll see all the little repeaters in that area. This stuff is easily searchable online. Our stuff is located on our website with the PL tone, the correct PL tone.
Anything like a repeater book?
Yeah, repeater book will have it. You can easily find this stuff. Usually, it may have a, not necessarily a coordinator listed. You can go out and put your own repeater up. However, you need to understand that there's an agreement that says that you will converse with the coordinating agency, and they will help you pick a frequency that does not cause interference to your neighbors. Okay? You can do this all day long. With a ham license, you can build a repeater. I've built many of them. But you have to coordinate all of that. Okay. We talked about DMR last week. Digital repeaters are only the digital version of this. Instead of audio, we're passing ones and zeros. Lots of ones and zeros. Anybody get confused when we talked about time slots last week? It's okay if you didn't get it. That's a good time. It's a little confusing, right? Okay, so there are two things that we can look at when we talk about spectrum. We can either look at frequency. So I'm just going to use something generic here. 10 megs to 11 megs. Okay, that area, that real estate between the two. Or we can look at it in time. And in this case, I'm going to start from point A to point B. Okay, there's lots of ways to look at things. But if we take just time, okay, so a transmitter, let's put a transmitter at, pick a UHF frequency, guys. Never mind, I will, 445. That was amazing, wasn't it? Okay, so if I'm looking at it on spectrum here, right at 445, I'm going to have my little blip right there. So this may be 440. I'll move so you guys can see. And then 450. Okay, so if I'm looking at just the spectral content, the spectrum, I will see that birdie at 445. Okay, but in time, I can take this and segment it into, instead of A and B, I have time slot 1 and time slot 2. Okay? And remember we talked about we're receiving on one frequency and transmitting on another. So there's one thing to be able to do time slots that I have to do. And it doesn't matter for VHF or UHF, so the numbers, don't worry about the numbers. We're talking blocks. This transmitter is getting a signal from the controller. The controller is passing audio and telling it when to turn on and turn off. Well, one of the things that it's sending is a synchronizing pulse on the receive channel. The transmit channel from the repeater goes into receive channel on your radio. And that is the timing reference. And once I have a timing reference, the radio says, okay, for so many milliseconds I can turn on because I'm trying to talk in time slot 1. And then I've got to turn off. So I've compressed all of my audio, I've digitized it, I've squeezed it down as small as I can make it to where all of my information can fit in that time slot. Then that radio has to turn off because somebody else is using time slot too. Okay? And that goes back and forth and back and forth and back and forth at a extremely rapid rate. Because we're passing a lot of information in a short amount of time, but because I can divide time, if I have that clocking pulse, just like digital audio, Tim, the clock, okay, that's what synchronizes everything. So on the D-snake between the consoles, that has a timing pulse that's running. All things digital have to have a synchronizing source. Okay, if not, then it can't split into time slots. Okay, so it's always going to be in a full duplex environment to where things are going bidirectional. Okay, it'll never be in a half duplex where it goes and waits and comes back, or a simplex where it goes this way and then it comes back to me from a different radio. Okay, it's always going to be in duplex, and there's always going to be a timing pulse. Did that kind of make sense to this? Okay. So in DMR, that's how it works. Because on time slot 1 is a talk group. On time slot 2 is a different talk group. And that's how they divide the talk groups. That's the same way with your cell phone if you're an AT&T customer. And if you're an AT&T customer today, you would hope that you were in Columbia with me because we had coverage. Sumter did not. Sumter did not have Verizon today either. And we're going to find out tomorrow that it was probably a major fiber outage.
Cut cable in Kentucky.
Was it? It's already out. Okay, it's called backhoe fade. Okay?
Well, actually, the report I read, the report actually said they didn't know whether it was vandalism or a raccoon of all stupid.
Raccoon.
Raccoon.
It was a backhoe.
Yeah, they're underground, raccoons don't shoot up.
Yeah, raccoons are not, ground dwelling, children that tunnel.
Serious news sources said
Yeah.
they weren't sure if it was a terrorist or a raccoon.
And in all honesty, they would never tell you the truth anyway.
Probably not.
You never get a report out of the communications industry that's telling you the honest truth. Because if you knew, you wouldn't buy their service. Some days the world is held together with a piece of Scotch tape.
If they had the best service, they wouldn't lock you into a contract.
That is true too, but then again, choose your poison. It depends on what covers your house or doesn't cover y'all's house away from here. We had that conversation last week. Is everybody good with this? And if you're still hung up on backhoe fade, trust me, if you take one of those backhoes and go dig, you will find anything that's buried in the ground. And a lot of it isn't cool. Some of it's shocking, literally.
You go far enough, you'll find stuff that they didn't want.
Yeah, I mean, you may find stuff you can't get rid of the rest of your life.
Yep.
Or finds that you can't get rid of the rest of your life. All right, so we talked about nets a while ago. The structure and participation. There are very formal ways to do this stuff. Someone will gladly instruct you on that is a strict disciplinarian. Hopefully they will be nice, but if not, I'll apologize in advance for their inability to have human conversations that are polite. You'll appreciate this the first time you run into one of them. Just know that everybody doesn't have my sense of humor, nor my fun sense of sarcasm.
No lids, no kids.
Do what now?
No lids, no kids.
No lids, no kids, and yeah, anyway.
No space cadets.
Okay, so when can a non-ham key up a ham radio legally? Hang on. Ed, let Ed get a shot at it. Go for it, Ed.
Emergency,
Why?
like that.
Exactly. If it's a life or death emergency, key it up. I've told my family if we're in a car accident and I'm incapacitated and I'm the only ham in the car, grab the microphone, key up, and start calling for help. Just remember to unkey and let them talk to you. Okay? I have to give those real instructions. You've got young kids. It's okay. If you're incapacitated and they need to call for help, teach them properly at a young age how to respect what that is. The only way is if mommy or daddy are severely injured and you need help, it's okay. Shelley was taught that when she was big enough to get in the truck and waddle around between the seats. And she, to the best of my knowledge, has never had to do that. Okay? When's the other time that a non-ham can key up a radio and talk? There's one other instance. And yeah, I'm all over the place, guys, so don't look at the next page in the book, because this is different. This is somewhere else. This is because tonight this stuff is going to be in random fire order where things associate. So my ADHD is coming out tonight, so we may go squirrel in a minute. I didn't realize I had it until my daughter was diagnosed and said, crap, she's just like her dad. Shelley's been living with it all of her life.
And that's terrible.
Yeah, you know. So I'll tell you what it is. When there is a control operator present. Okay? So at field day, we'll tell you bring your friends. We'll baptize them in ham radio. They can sit down and operate. You know why? Because there's a ham with a license that is acting as the control operator. In other words, if you go to screw up, I can go, no, honey, don't do that. Let's leave that alone. Okay? Your kids or your parents or your significant other, may God have mercy on the ham community. But anyway, they can get on, and as long as you have a license and you're operating in spectrum that you legally can operate in, they can get on and operate. And that's an incentive for us to be able to pull more people into the hobby. Plain and simple. You guys that are involved in CAP, if y'all want to do one of the contest weekends where you go out and you set up a radio, you can have the other CAP members come and work that contest with you, as long as somebody with a license is sitting there making sure that they're not operating outside of the law. Okay? And that's a great way to bring, especially when you're dealing with new cadets. You want them in radio service? Take a radio out. It doesn't have to be a formalized, QSO party or something like that. Schedule with a couple other hams to just be available to talk.
They do it in schools all the time.
Yeah, do it in school all the time. But there's always a licensed control operator. So that's the other deviation on that one. So that, 2 paragraphs that's about control operators later we just covered. Okay, so tactical communications. Wow, tactical. We're not military. Why do we have to have tactical? Well, tactical is a good catchphrase for when we do parades. For those of you who have ever witnessed a parade of any size, I will bet you $1 to a dozen donut holes there's probably a 6-pack or a 12-pack of hams with radios standing out there trying to help them line up. Not that they listen much, but yeah. So the hams do crazy stuff like that. We help now the evening optimist, and that in itself is kind of funny, because why isn't there an evening pessimist? But that's another story. So the evening optimist used to be JC's a long time ago, and we worked with the JCs, and we did the parades. Now we do the evening optimist. Is it Christmas parade? I think it is. Yeah. So we get out there and we help them line up. We provide communications to really any social organization or 501c3 nonprofit that needs help coordinating things and need radio traffic. We volunteer our time. We don't all do it. It may be me today and 5 other guys out of the group, and next week it won't even involve half of us, and maybe 6 other guys. The beauty of that is, we try to help when we can, especially groups like the Red Cross. We do what we can for them, because those folks in disaster, they put it on the line for us. And we do our best to help them, not only in non-emergency, but emergency.
They helped me out there in Hugo. I actually ended up getting one of their low band radios.
Yeah.
I still have. It's
Yeah,
a great
so-
radio.
They groups like that need our help. You see, like Team Rubicon and stuff like that. When they're out doing their missions, how do they communicate? Their guys are hams. You know, the Cajun Navy, when they come in and flood and try to help people, how do they communicate? Guys are hams.
Most of them are.
Most of them, yeah. Not all of them. But they got enough ham operators to be able to divvy it up to where they can communicate. You know, who do the cities and counties of South Carolina and every other state in the country depend on when their crap goes down? Us. Because we can talk. I've shown you things how to build antennas out of nothing. Pretty much, if you can find a chunk of wire, you can probably get on the radio. Interesting. You know, when everything's folded up and, you know, it's going to take purchase orders and people to go fix. And we're sitting there in the parking lot talking with our friends about how screwed up they look. We're talking, they're not.
Yeah, that's the first thing they talked about in Florence County when they put up the 800 system.
Mhm.
Because of all the computerized equipment that goes up. They said, if this stuff ever goes down, we're going to be totally in the dark. And they were right, because it happened.
Yeah. And if you ever end up working on that stuff and get to know it and love it the way that I did for so many years, you realize just how fragile it is.
It is. We were in fail-soft 4 times when I could count
Oh, yeah.
minutes. It always was going down.
Yeah, so what happens when, you know, you mentioned fail-soft, so what happens there is all of these divisions between groups of people, all of these different talk groups in the digital world, when it goes to fail-soft, all that goes away and everything is flat. It's just like one big community repeater. So it's one big party line for those of you old enough to remember what they are. Nobody can talk because it's chaos. It's like trying to drive through town with no power on the stoplights in communications world. It's not pretty. So we are the primary backup.
Oh, speaking of
Hello?
with that,
I shall wave my hand. Holy cow. Hey, let's take a break
good job.
while I go find who owns the light, who didn't pay the power bill.